The porch light stayed on after everyone had gone back inside. It was 9:10, though the tiredness in your shoulders felt closer to midnight. The short family visit had left its small traces: a paper plate in the trash, a chair turned slightly from where someone had sat, the family photo frame resting near the door after being moved and noticed and set down again. You stood beside someone who said very little. Not angry silence. Not distance exactly. Just the kind of quiet that sometimes lives between people who have tried, in their own ordinary ways, to love each other. The dark street waited beyond the porch chair. No one photographed this part. No one saw your tired hands loosen, or the way the outside air touched your face for a moment. Still, something warm remained there. Small. Uneven. Enough to stand beside. The house behind you had not gone completely silent yet. There was still the low sound of someone moving a cup in the kitchen, the soft closing of a cabinet, the little shuffle of feet trying not to wake the baby. Somewhere inside, a blanket had been pulled over a couch arm. A sink light was probably still on. The ordinary things were still there, waiting for someone to notice them later. But out on the porch, the night felt separate. The porch chair faced the dark street as if it had been waiting all evening for the visit to end. Not in a cold way. Not because the people inside were too much. Only because some rooms, after family leaves, need a place to let the extra feeling settle. You stood near that chair without sitting down. Your body was still holding the visit. The careful smile. The baby being passed from one set of arms to another. Someone saying how much the baby had changed already, though the baby was still so new that every hour seemed to change something. Someone offering advice without making it sound like advice. Someone asking whether you were sleeping, then answering their own question with a small laugh. You smiled because it was easier. And maybe because some of it was kind. There are visits that do not hurt exactly, but they leave a person full in a way that is hard to name. Full of voices. Full of history. Full of the old family patterns moving around the room like furniture everyone knows how to avoid in the dark. A comment that was meant gently. A silence that lasted a little too long. A look across the room that carried more years than words could hold. Then there was the person beside you. They did not say much. They had stood there after the last car pulled away, after the taillights had slipped down the street and turned the corner. Their hands were in their pockets, or maybe folded in front of them, holding nothing. They looked toward the dark, toward the quiet row of houses, toward the single porch light shining over the steps. Not every kind of love knows how to speak. Sometimes love comes out as showing up at 7 o'clock with a covered dish. Sometimes it comes out as checking the thermostat without being asked. Sometimes it is a grocery bag left on the counter, a hand touching the baby's back for half a second longer than necessary, a photo frame being straightened because there is no easier way to say, "I remember this family too." The frame was still near the door. Maybe someone had picked it up during the visit and looked at it for a while. Maybe they had said, "I forgot about that day." Maybe they had not said anything, only held it in both hands, thumb resting along the edge, eyes moving over the faces inside it. A family photo can be a strange object at night. In the daytime, it is decoration. It sits on a table, or a shelf, or near the entry where people pass it without thinking. But after a visit, after the voices have gone and the porch light is the only light left on, a photo frame can feel almost too honest. Everyone inside it is held still. Everyone is younger. Someone is smiling in a way they may not smile anymore. Someone has an arm around someone else without knowing how much that small gesture would mean later. You noticed it from the porch. Not fully. Not with a thought that arrived complete. More like the corner of your eye caught the shape of it through the doorway, and your tired hands knew before your mind did. That little frame had carried more than the picture. It had carried the effort people made to belong to one another, even when they did it awkwardly. That was the part no one photographed. No one took a picture of the moment after the visit, when a new parent stood under the porch light with a body that wanted sleep and a heart that was still sorting through the evening. No one captured the person beside them saying almost nothing, yet not going inside right away. No one saved the sound of the street at 9:10, or the baby monitor waiting somewhere beyond the door, or the tired quiet that came after everyone had tried. But it was there. It was small, and it was there. The air touched your face for a moment. Cool enough to notice. Soft enough not to ask anything from you. The porch light made a pale circle on the floorboards, and beyond it the street held its darkness without making a problem of it. Inside, someone may have rinsed one last plate. The baby may have moved in sleep. The frame may have caught a little of the hallway light. And beside you, the quiet person stayed. Maybe that was all they knew how to give. Maybe that was what they had always known how to give. Presence without many words. Care that arrived in objects, in visits, in repaired things, in being there until the car left and the door was almost closed. For once, it did not need to become more than that. There are evenings when family does not leave all at once. The cars leave first. Then the sound of them leaving stays. Then the house holds the shape of everyone who has just been there, even after the rooms are mostly empty again. A cushion stays pressed down. A napkin is folded and left beside a cup. Someone's laugh seems to linger near the hallway, not loud anymore, just familiar enough to be felt. A short visit can still fill a whole room. Especially with a baby in the house. People arrive carrying small things. A casserole dish. A pack of diapers. A bag with something they saw at the store and thought might be useful. They step through the front door and lower their voices, even when the baby is awake. They ask whether they should take off their shoes. They say the baby has your eyes, or maybe your chin, or maybe the same serious look someone else in the family used to have. Everyone wants to find a thread. Sometimes that is what family does. It reaches around the present moment, looking for the old pattern inside the new one. A newborn hand becomes a reminder of another hand. A sleeping face becomes an old photograph. A tiny stretch in a blanket brings back a story someone has told too many times, yet cannot quite stop telling. And you listen. You listen while keeping one ear turned toward the baby. You listen while noticing whether the bottle is warming, whether the burp cloth is still on the arm of the chair, whether the dog is getting too close to the diaper bag, whether someone is about to wake the child just when the house is finally settled. No one sees all of that listening. They see you standing in the room. They see you smiling at the right places. They see you nodding when someone tells you again how fast it all goes. They may even see the tiredness under your eyes and say something kind about it. But they do not see the small, constant attention running underneath everything, like a quiet wire in the walls. That is the tiredness of new parenthood. Not only sleep missing from the body, though that is part of it. It is the way the body stays ready. Ready for a cry. Ready for a change. Ready for one more need. Ready to be gentle when there is hardly enough gentleness left for yourself. Still, there was warmth in it. Not bright warmth. Not the kind anyone would name while standing near the door with coats being gathered and leftovers being covered. It was more like the small warmth left in a room after people have tried, imperfectly, to show they care. Someone had touched the family photo frame. Maybe it was not important to anyone else. Maybe it happened so quietly that the room moved past it. But you saw the frame slightly out of place later, angled toward the porch, as if the picture had briefly been part of the visit too. The faces inside it belonged to another time. There were no bottles on the counter then. No baby monitor. No tiny socks disappearing in the laundry. No one had yet become this tired version of themselves, standing in the new shape of a family and learning how much love can ask from the body. The photo did not explain anything. It only sat there. Sometimes an object is gentle because it does not ask to be answered. A frame does not tell the truth loudly. It does not settle old things. It does not make everyone kinder than they were. It only holds a moment when people stood close enough to fit inside one border, and for a little while, that can be enough. The person beside you on the porch may have looked at it too. Maybe they had looked earlier, while everyone was talking. Maybe they had noticed the younger faces, the old clothes, the way someone's hand rested on someone else's shoulder. Maybe they had remembered something they did not want to say in the crowded room. Some people carry memory quietly. They do not bring it out in full sentences. They do not soften the evening with speeches. They stand near you after the visit, beneath the porch light, and let the silence say only what it can. Not everything. Not even most things. But something. The street was dark enough to make the porch feel small. The chair faced outward, empty and patient. The light above the door made the photo frame behind you catch a faint edge of brightness from inside the house. And for a moment, there was no need to sort it all out. There was only the visit that had happened. The tired baby. The quiet person. The frame near the door. The ordinary ways people had tried to love, some of them clumsy, some of them shy, some of them almost hidden. You stood there with all of it. And the air kept touching your face. The quiet on the porch did not feel empty. It had weight, but not the kind that pressed down hard. It was more like the weight of a blanket left over the back of a chair, familiar because someone had placed it there without thinking. The porch held the evening that way. It held the footsteps that had crossed it earlier, the soft goodbyes, the careful waving from the steps, the last little look through the window before the car backed out. Now the light stayed on. A single porch light can make a small place feel almost tender. It does not brighten the whole street. It does not reach very far. It only gives enough to see the edge of the chair, the rail, The place where the steps begin, the shape of the person standing beside you. Enough is sometimes very quiet. You could still feel the room behind you, even from outside. The photo frame near the door. The little shift of family memory resting inside glass. The living room with its used cups and softened cushions. The place where someone had stood holding the baby and saying nothing for a while, just looking. That kind of looking can stay with you. It was not the loudest part of the visit. It was not the part anyone would repeat later. No one would say, "Remember when he stood there and looked at the baby without talking?" No one would make a story out of it. But maybe that was the part your heart kept returning to after the front door closed. Because some people say the most when they say very little. They stand near the edge of a room. They pick up a dropped pacifier and rinse it without asking where it goes. They move a plate away from the baby's reach. They look at the family photo frame for a moment longer than expected, then put it back carefully, as if the past might bruise if handled too roughly. They do not always know how to enter tenderness directly. Maybe they never learned. Maybe the rooms they grew up in did not have many soft words in them. Maybe love came through work, through fixing things, through being present at the right time and then disappearing before anyone thanked them. Maybe silence became the safest language they knew. So they stood beside you on the porch. And you stood beside them. Neither of you had to make the moment useful. That was the relief of it. No one was asking for a decision. No one was asking whether the baby had slept, or whether you were okay, or whether everything felt different now. The visit had already asked enough of your face, enough of your voice, enough of your careful new parent attention. Out here, your shoulders could lower a little. Not all the way. Just a little. The dark street did not need you to perform being fine. The porch chair did not need conversation. The air did not ask you to translate the whole evening into words. It only touched your cheeks and passed on, light as something that had no opinion about you. That can feel like kindness too. Behind the door, the photo frame waited in the part of the house no one photographs. Not the smiling part. Not the bright living room during the visit. Not the baby held up for a picture, not the group gathered close, not the small proud moment people save on their phones. This was the after place. The edge place. The porch, the chair, the dark street, the adult body that stayed awake after everyone else had gone quiet. So much love happens there. Not only in the picture. Not only in the moment someone is holding the baby and smiling for the camera. Love also happens when the dishes are still around, when someone is too tired to speak, when the porch light is left on without ceremony. It happens in the pause after the visit, when the old family ways do not become easy, but they become visible for a second. Visible enough. You could feel the warmth there, but it was not simple. It had old edges. It had missed words inside it. It had the strange ache of being loved by people who may not always know how to meet you clearly. And still, they came. They stood in your doorway. They looked at the baby. They touched the frame. They tried in the ways they had. That mattered softly. The person beside you shifted their weight. Maybe a shoe moved against the porch floor. Maybe they took one breath that sounded almost like the beginning of a sentence, then let it go. You did not push. The quiet stayed. And for once, the quiet was allowed to be part of the family too. After a while, the porch stopped feeling like a place outside the house. It became its own small room. The light above the door made a ceiling out of brightness. The rail became a wall. The dark street became something like a window, wide and quiet, showing only what night was willing to show. A mailbox across the street. The dull shine of a parked car. The pale square of a neighbor's curtain. Nothing dramatic. Nothing asking to be remembered. Still, you remembered. Not all at once. Not in a clear line. Memory came the way it often comes after family leaves, in small pieces that do not ask permission first. A hand reaching for a diaper bag. A voice saying the baby's name softly, like trying it on. Someone laughing in the old family rhythm. Someone going quiet when the photo frame was passed from one hand to another. You had seen that quiet before. Maybe not in the same place. Maybe years ago, in another living room, around another doorway, during some other evening when adults had feelings they did not know how to set down. Children notice those things before they have words for them. They notice who talks. They notice who leaves the room. They notice who stands close but does not touch. They notice the person who stays near the edge, saying very little, but somehow still not gone. Now you were the adult. That can happen without warning. One day you are the child in the family photo, held in place by someone else's arm. Later, you are the tired parent on the porch, hearing the baby shift inside the house, feeling the old shapes of love move around you in new ways. The frame near the door holds one version of the family, But your body holds another. The version that waited through visits. The version that tried not to make things harder. The version that learned what was safe to say, and what was easier to leave alone. The person beside you may have known some of that too. Maybe they carried a different version. Maybe in their memory, the rooms looked smaller or louder. Maybe they remembered who worked late, who made dinner, who forgot birthdays, who showed up anyway. Maybe they remembered being young and not knowing what to do with all that unsaid feeling. They did not explain it. They stood there. There is a kind of standing beside someone that is almost invisible. It does not fix the past. It does not make the present simple. It does not become a beautiful conversation. It is only a body choosing not to leave yet, while the night holds the two of you gently enough. Maybe that was why you stayed. Your hands were tired. New parent tired. The kind that comes from fastening tiny snaps in dim light, lifting a small body carefully, holding a bottle at an angle, checking the rise and fall of a sleeping chest before walking away. Your hands knew care now in a way they had not known before. They knew how much love can live in repetition. So when you thought of the people who had just left, you did not only think of what they failed to say. You could feel, faintly, the things they may have done instead. The rides given. The bills paid late. The porch lights left on. The food brought over in containers that would need to be returned. The way someone's hand hovered near the baby's blanket, wanting to help without knowing where to begin. Ordinary love is often awkward. It misses the right words. It comes too early or too late. It asks the wrong question. It brings something practical when what was wanted was softness. It stands in the doorway and comments on the weather because there is too much feeling in the room. And still, there was the visit. There was the family photo frame, set back with care. There was the person beside you, saying almost nothing. There was the night air, touching your face like a small pause you did not have to earn. The house behind you breathed in its quiet way. Maybe the refrigerator hummed. Maybe the baby monitor held its soft static. Maybe one lamp inside made the photo frame shine just enough for the glass to catch the porch light. You did not need to turn around yet. For a moment, you could let the frame stay where it was. You could let the picture hold what pictures hold, and let the porch hold what pictures miss. The tired hands. The unsaid words. The person beside you. The warmth that had no perfect shape. The night made room for all of it. Later, the street grew even darker. Not suddenly. It happened by degrees, the way a house becomes quiet after people stop expecting anything from the evening. One window across the street went black. A car passed and left a soft rush behind it. Somewhere farther off, a dog barked once, then seemed to remember the hour and let the silence return. The porch light stayed steady. You were still standing beside the person who said very little. By then, the visit had moved farther away. Not gone, exactly. It still lived in the air around you, but the sharp edges had softened. The small comments did not feel as close. The unfinished sentences did not press as hard. Even the old family patterns, the ones that had entered the room without knocking, seemed tired now. Everything had lowered. Inside the house, the baby was asleep or almost asleep. That almost mattered. New parents learn the difference between asleep and almost asleep, between stillness that is safe and stillness that might break open at any second. They learn to hear small sounds through walls. They learn to pause before closing a cabinet. They learn that love can make the whole body alert. Even now, part of you was listening. But another part of you was on the porch, held by the dark street and the single light above the door. Your hands were no longer doing anything. That alone felt strange. No bottle. No blanket. No plate to carry. No phone to answer. No small body to lift carefully against your chest. Only your hands, tired and empty. The person beside you shifted again. Maybe they wanted to say something. Maybe they had already said everything they knew how to say by staying there. Their quiet did not feel open in an easy way, but it did not feel closed either. It was more like an old drawer that had always been hard to pull, not because there was nothing inside, but because the wood had swollen over time. Some people are like that. You can feel the life inside them. You can feel the love, too, though it comes through narrow places. A look. A repair made without being mentioned. A ride offered before anyone asks. A family photo touched and set back carefully near the door. It may never come out cleanly. Still, it comes. The photo frame caught your attention again when you glanced toward the house. Through the doorway, it sat in that small, half-lit place no one thinks to photograph. Not hidden. Not displayed, either. Just there, holding a younger version of everyone who had once stood close enough to be called a family. The glass reflected a little porch light. For a moment, the reflection made it hard to see the faces. Maybe that was right. At night, memory does not always show the whole picture. Sometimes it gives only the edge of someone's shoulder, the color of a shirt, the feeling of being small in a room where adults were trying and failing and trying again. The person beside you breathed out. It was almost nothing. But you heard it. And maybe that was the pause the whole evening had been moving toward. Not a speech. Not an apology. Not a warm ending tied neatly around everything. Just two people standing near the dark street after a family visit, with one light left on, letting the silence hold what the room could not hold earlier. No one needed to name it. The air had cooled against your face. Your body still wanted sleep. Your hand still carried the memory of the baby's weight. Somewhere inside, the family photo waited near the door, and all the ordinary attempts at love rested inside it without becoming simpler than they were. The porch chair remained empty. It faced the street patiently, as if it knew some pauses are not for sitting down. Some pauses are only for standing beside someone until the night becomes less crowded. Until the heart stops reaching for the right sentence. Until the warmth that remains can be felt without being explained. You looked toward the dark. The person beside you looked there too. And for a little while, that was enough company. The porch did not ask for anything more. It held the light, the chair, the dark street, and the quiet person beside you. It held the visit after the visit was over. It held the family photo frame near the door, with all those faces resting behind glass, younger than the night remembered them. Inside, the baby slept. Or almost slept. Your hands were empty now, but not untouched. They still knew the weight of care. They still knew how ordinary love feels when it comes in tired, unfinished ways. The person beside you said very little. And still, they stayed. Maybe that was the shape gratitude took for a moment. Not a bright feeling. Not a sentence. Only warmth for the ways people tried, even awkwardly, to love. The porch light remained on. The street stayed dark. And no one had to fill the silence.